Just a disclaimer, I'm not suggesting or endorsing that you perform this to yours. I'm just merely showing as educational purposes how I fixed mine. Alright, I'm going to show you guys how to fix your auto-ordnance or any M1 carbine, I guess, for that matter. If you have, well, it's not a fix-all for every gun, but these auto-ordnances are notorious from my research of having failure to fire, and it's due to a light primer strike, and there's a way to fix that, so I'm going to show you how to do that. Now my hands are a little dirty and gross because I just got done working on the Durango, but you're just going to have to deal with that. So basically the problem is I bought this gun off my buddy. He bought it brand new. These things are like $700-800, and he sold it to me because about every other shot he would get a shot, and then the next one would go click. Pull the bullet out, see a very, very light primer strike, chamber another round, bang, next round, click. Okay, it was pretty obvious from the markings on the back of the shell that it was a light primer strike, but what doesn't make sense is why do sometimes you get a good primer strike and then the next time you get a light primer strike? Well, now here's your bolt. I'm not going to show you how to take the bolt out. There's a little trick to it, but there's plenty of videos on YouTube if you need to know how to get that thing out of there, and I'm not going to cover that in this one. Okay, well, it goes like this. The firing pin in this is a free-floating firing pin. So there's your firing pin, and it's one whole piece. This little thing that hangs out here, that whole thing is the firing pin. So that fits in that channel, and then it comes out the tip like that. So it's free-floating, okay? So initially I thought you should be able to hear this rattle. That's the firing pin in there sliding back and forth. What I noticed was if I tipped the gun up to rack the charging handle and then I went to aim at my target, it would go bang every time. If I pointed the gun down to rack the charging handle, it wouldn't go bang. Those were the times it wouldn't go bang. And if you're the kind of person that racks it with the barrel pointing straight out, it might go bang, it might not. So what I learned was, well, obviously light primer strikes, there was nothing wrong with this. I used the tool to break this completely apart, pull this out. There's a special tool you need to do that. And, thinking that maybe there was something in the channel, and there wasn't. I'm like, all right, well, how come when I tip it forward so that the pin comes out, it goes bang, or it does not go bang, sorry. But when I tip it back, then it goes bang, right? So what I gathered from that was, with it all the way forward, okay, it's farther away. Well, I gotta pull the trigger here to show you. So there's your hammer. So what I gathered was, when I would tip the gun forward to pull the charging handle, and that would make that firing pin closer to the bullet, but further away from the hammer. And that's when I would get a light primer strike. If I tipped it back, taking the firing pin further into the channel and away from the shell, it would go bang. So I was like, okay, it's barely touching it when it's forward like that, but when I tip the gun back so that it goes back in the channel like that, the hammer's hitting it good enough so that it drives it forward with a lot of force. It hits the primer, and the round goes off. When it's tipped forward, it's too far away from the hammer, and the hammer just barely touches it. So it gets a light primer strike, and it doesn't go off. Now what the hell is causing that? Because the hammer goes all the way forward, it doesn't matter, it stops where it's supposed to and all that. So what the issue is the way, there's an internal safety on this thing, okay? The way it works, the way this gun was designed, this bolt, when you rack it, it turns, okay? So it'll be somewhere in that orientation, give or take a few millimeters either way, when it's completely closed and it's ready to fire. When you pull the hammer back, the whole thing pivots. Okay? That hammer right there has to line up with that notch to strike that firing pin. And it lines up in there like that, and it's got to make it through that channel to hit that. So basically what has occurred is if this doesn't line up perfect, then what you get is your hammer. I'm sorry this thing keeps blurring, it's really irritating me. You can even see that little indent there. Your hammer ends up hitting this because it's too far that way. Okay, it needs to be straight like that, so the hammer can go through that channel, hit this firing pin. So if your bolt isn't perfectly lined up and it's a little bit like that, then it whacks this instead of hitting this, or it nicks this or whatever. And a lot of these had that issue straight from the factory, like this one. There's too much play and things didn't line up 100%, and so that's what was occurring, causing that issue. So what I did was I took a Dremel with a little grinding wheel, and very, very carefully and very slowly I ground down the edge. I ground down both edges because I wasn't sure which one it was hitting. I couldn't see a dent or anything like I do now when I first started. So I basically just polished all this, and on that side I ground it down a little bit, like a millimeter, if that, probably half a millimeter. And then I used a little wire brush on the Dremel, polished it up, put it back in, tried, still had some failures, so I took it back out, took a little more off, polished it up, and I basically just did that until I got it to work 100%, whether the gun was tipped forward or back. And you can see in this picture, this is the progression. You can see in the on the primers on the bullets that each one in succession hit it harder and harder and harder. So that was me just taking a little more off at a time until I got it to hit the primer the way I wanted. So it's actually a defect in the gun that this isn't lining up properly, but you can get around that by polishing that down a little bit. So you're essentially taking the safety mechanism out of it. But what that was so that this was supposed to be in a certain orientation when your charging handle was all the way forward, to make sure that that round was completely chambered, because you didn't want the round to not be completely chambered and go off, because you can blow out the brass that way. So once that thing was fully forward, and this was supposed to be in the correct orientation so that it would allow the gun to go off. Sometimes you would get it to where it would be like that and it wouldn't quite be all the way forward, and it was supposed to go click to not let it go off. You just have to whap the handle to make it go into full battery, and then it was supposed to line up and go off. The problem is with this one, and some of them when they get wore out, as it gets too much play in it and it doesn't line up properly, even though it's in full battery, it's all the way forward. And that's the case with this one. So it's just manufacturing tolerances, because this is a brand new gun. They made it sloppy, they didn't make it right, and that's how you fix it. Just take off just enough to where you give that hammer enough room. God, this thing keeps blurring. To where it can go far enough forward to hit that firing pin hard enough, whether it's forward or back, so that you get a good primer strike. So that's how you fix it. So I wholeheartedly suggest that you just send your gun back if you bought it new. My buddy didn't want to do that. I told him, I was like, just send it back to him, man. It's a brand new gun, it's under warranty, send it back to him. And he tinkered with it himself some and couldn't figure it out and ended up selling it to me at a discount. So I snatched it up because I knew I could fix it, and I fixed it, and now it runs pretty good. I don't have any light primer strikes anymore, that's for sure. So that's how you fix it. Like I said, not going to show you how to pull the bolt out and all that. There's a little trick to it and getting it back in, but I just wanted to show you how to fix that in this video. Yeah, if you want to see more of this gun, I already have one review video up, and I made mention that I was going to make this video in there, and I actually just got a little scope mount for it because I want to try to see what kind of groups we can print and how far I can shoot this, because my eyes aren't the greatest on the iron sights. So I'm going to at least have a video of that coming up. Instead of getting the kind where it replaces this with a pick rail, so you pretty much can only use a red dot, because obviously your scope's not going to work if it's clear up here and your face is back here. I found one that replaces the rear sight and gives you a little pick rail like this, so you can put a red dot or a scope on there. It has just enough room to mount a little scope on there, so I'm going to have that coming up for sure. Anyways, if you guys have an M1 and you're having that issue, hopefully this fixes it for you. It did for me. Specifically, if you have the auto-ordnance one with this common issue, that's how you fix it. But it'll work on some other M1s also that have the same issue due to tolerance issues and play in the bolt and all that. But hey, thanks for watching. Hit that like button for me, and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you want to know when I post more videos. Catch you next time.